So this is the first in what will hopefully be a series of videos, almost like a podcast sort of format where I talk to different players, different people in the community, and get their feedback on the game, what they like, what they dislike, what they'd like to see changed in the future. And as Vision rolls out their next few patches, we can also discuss every change they make, whether it's good or bad, what they should do, what they shouldn't do, and just generally canvas the community. So today I'm joined by Smithers and Renee, but hopefully in the future we can wrap in some other players, maybe even some people on the staff if they want to take part. This is really just an open format. So Renee, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
I am Renee. I've played this game since release. I took part in beta. I originally quit in 2012 to pursue a different game, but I came back in 2018 ultimately due to my care for the game. I love the game. It's pretty cool. My expertise fields in this game is PvP and RVR. I do love the lore and the missions. They are quite fun if they're more finished. That's a wrap.
Okay, and Smithers, you want to introduce yourself?
So I started playing in the tail end of 2012, and so I kind of experienced the old game, and then I've been basically steady since then. I haven't really taken any meaningful breaks. Maybe a month or two at a time. I've always been definitely a PvP oriented player, but when I started, I definitely spent at least the first year of my game time doing PvE and fleeting and thoroughly basking in all of those parts of the game. And currently, I'm a community staff member, and I help do QA and suggest changes for the future of the game.
If Legacy doesn't work out, or if it's not a good idea in your mind, what is your top 3 changes to the live servers besides like increased population? Like what's your wish list 3 changes? So like assume population is healthier, what's your 3 changes? I'll give you my 3 and then I'll let you go, Smithers. Then you have a think while I'm going. My number 1 would be to add Invincible and Too Mean to Die back as they were back in the day. Give that variety in tactics. Number 2 wish list would be to smoothen the accuracy curve so it's no longer just a sharp drop off at 500 or 525. Make it a little bit smoother, a bit more, reactionary, but keep the 800, 700 yard spikes out of the game. And then the last one would be to actually change, this is a bit more like radical, is to go and do an edit pass on all the port battle maps and either change the doors around or change the wind directions, move the fort, move the town, create a new experience there, a new landscape, because it's too stale and the new maps don't suit the new meta. Like Savage Cliffs is the worst map ever now, and it shouldn't be. It shouldn't even exist right now with the current stats. Those are my 3. Smithers?
So I think my wish list would probably be number 1 would have to be a ship overhaul just across the board. Stats. You have to make specialization. You have to make things interesting. You have to give people a reason to get another ship, right? It's great that everybody can get 1 boat or 1 or 2 boats and just be good for the rest of the game. But that doesn't help everybody, and that it kind of kills the. I feel like one of the biggest things when I started the game was the sheer, like, what am I going to do next, right? Like, every time I level up, I'm like, man, can I get a new boat? What is this going to do for me? How is it different from the next one, the previous one, excuse me. And then, like I got to level 38 and I got the Mark of Victory refit and I was like, oh man, I'm balling now. I got the cool boat. And I think without that, the game kind of lacks something. It lacks the magic that it used to have. Number 2 would probably be what you touched on.
One second. If we go back to number 1, follow-up question.
Mm-hmm.
Is it seeing different groups or different boats in different groups, like having a group with Mercies and Achilles and all of that? Or is it also the thrill of having different classes have a specialization? Like the Privateer has the Achilles, which is faster and more nimble. The Mercy has, or the NO has the Mercy, which is tankier. Is that part of it too? Or is it just variety as a whole? Or does it need to be like class variety?
Can I cut in for a sec?
Yeah.
So when I started playing this game in 2008, everyone had their own specialty. Well, this is before Buccaneer even existed. But the privateer was, you're a hired fucking pirate. You're a hired gun. You're there to go find people and kill them. Privateers are fast. And naval officer was big and tanky. They're nice and slow. They shoot hard and they DPS pretty quick. Free traders did the same thing. They could tank. They could trade. They had big boats that could haul tons of shit. The pirates were just there to, go stern bang you. That's all they were there for. They all had their own ships that did their own, specialized effects, but that's not there anymore. And there's no variety for that.
And your point is that it's too vanilla. Everybody goes fast. Everybody turns fast. Everybody spikes hard. Everybody does everything.
Yeah, everybody does everything, and back then it wasn't like that. Everyone had their own set of skills that did a certain set of things. Privateer could break you away, and he could, run a different way. He could tack up wind, get. Yeah, the free trader could give you the slip on the OS. He could pop misdirection. You can't tag his trader anymore. Naval officer could easily survive on one structure with TMTD. Or a pirate could, they could do a 6-liner breast charge with, invincible having on, and it was cool. There's none of that anymore. It's non-existent. Everyone has the same thing. They have the same damage, the same reload, and the same speed.
Smithers, you can go back to the original point of boat variety too.
I'd say it relies partially on class specialization, but on one hand, having all of the ships available to everyone kind of equals the playing field in that regard, where someone who is just say better at naval officer, and everyone has access to the same boats. If a player it becomes more dependent on the skill of the individual player rather than the skill of someone at a particular class. And so, that I guess that's just a design decision. For me right now, I kind of like the way it is. The fact like every fight is dictated not necessarily by the skill of someone with a particular class, but the skill of someone overall at the game, that they have to know how everything works rather than just, they can cheese their way to victory by using one boat that has really fast reload and just they can kill everybody because there's nothing you can do about it, rather than someone who goes, oh, well, this person is going to have good reload in this boat because of the class. And that kind of changes, the way the game is played. But there is something to be said for, class specialization, people finding their niche. But personally, I kind of like having a wide variety of boats more available to everybody, but with, one or two specializations available to the classes. That's kind of like an offshoot from the things that we already have for everybody else.
And then maybe restrict boats to class if there's like an OP combination, like a boat that turns extremely
of course.
well, and then you don't give it to Bucks or something like that.
Exactly, and that would make the most sense to me, because then at that point, if the boat turns really well, then it kind of, if you put it on a naval officer, it kind of makes the Buck go, well, I can't fight this person how I usually do. How am I going to change? How am I going to adapt? And I think that adds a little bit more depth to the gameplay, and I think that will keep people around a little longer, rather than someone just going, I'm going to turn like a top, like they did, back in the day.
And we don't have that right now because everybody's in a Hector or Adventure, and anything else you see is either just random or a meme.
Is irrelevant.
Yeah. And so you see a Hector, you know exactly what it does. There's no variation. It's not an Achilles.
Right. And nothing's being added right now, right? So you just know that it doesn't matter what you say. There's no like, well, do I bother putting all this time into the, getting good at this one boat? Like, yeah, you have to, because that's what everyone else sails. Rather than, back in the day, like you kind of had so much to choose from that I was like, well, I'm not going to waste my time getting good at this one boat because of, there's better options that suits my play style, or, there's better options that I'm just going to spend my time on because I like the model more, whatever it was at the time.
And what was neat back then is that you did have people who did specify in one boat despite all the choice. You could, like, there was people who love the Con, there's people who love the Vengeance, right? Like, you could specify and be viable, right? You didn't have to all sail the same boat and be like, well, this is all I can sail in to compete, right?
Right, and it did add a different level of gameplay, having people who could specialize like that. But I think that going overboard to the point where you make it so that if you play a privateer, you have to get an HMC, Or if you play free trade, you have to get a con to be productive, right? That's the same difference as it is now, where no matter who you are, you have to be an adventurer. So there should be a trade-off no matter who you are, no matter what class you play, no matter what you want to do. There should always be a choice. Like, well, if I go here, I'll get this, but I'll sacrifice that. And I think that's not something that was kind of in the past. Is that it was more of a...
It was in a way.
In a way.
Because if you picked a fast boat, you wouldn't be tanky. You're liable to get spiked out instantly, right? There was that, but you're right. There was also like the HMC that was just too good.
If you went to a port battle and you weren't in an HMC or a first rate at the time, whatever it was, you were called, you were useless basically, right? You were a detriment to your team, and I think that's too far in one extreme as well.
And that's the tricky
There's
part.
too much specialization.
Balancing the OS and port battles, because they're two
right,
different
of
beasts,
course.
Right?
Yeah.
So what was number 2 on the list?
That's a great fucking question.
Any change?
Probably, I think I was going to go with what you had touched on before, but the accuracy curve. I think that the drop off as it is just, it's too severe, and that you shouldn't. It's not good for a new player to be able to go from, say, 600 yards where you're basically invincible that nobody can sink you, right? It doesn't matter if you're awful or if you're the best player in the game. If you're going to get spiked by 6 people, if they use all of the debuffs correctly and they hit you with their biggest spike, you're fine, right? You get a block, there's no issue. Rather than now, if you go, 450, 400, you're dead in a 6v6 or a 10v10, right? There's no... the line, there's a very fine line between you're dead and you're fine, and I think that's not good for player retention. It should be more of a gradual, like, okay, well, as we get closer, like, we need to start picking up, what are we going to do? How are we going to play this fight? Are you sure you want to get that close? Maybe we should kite it out a little bit. Maybe let's see if they want to make a mistake, rather than how it is now, which is basically charge, and whoever has the group with the best players who are good at brawling wins every single fight. And I think that's a disservice to the majority of players who don't like that playstyle or who never learned how to play like that.
Yeah, and the alternative to charge is close in very slowly until someone puts himself in a bad spot and you destroy them instantly.
Right. And at that point, you're probably not paying attention to how close you're getting, and you're very likely to just get the fight's over, right? Because as soon as you lose 1, then you lose 2, then you lose 3.
Or you're a new player who doesn't realize that what was fine at 550, when you get to 450, you're suddenly no longer fine. You're now in the range of being just one shot.
Right. And I think that's too intense of a boundary. I think that's a disservice to a lot of players.
Number 3.
Number 3 would probably be just the streamlining of all the general aspects in the game. I think that the game takes too long to play. In terms of like the kind of the macro stuff, the bigger things, the port flips, the port battles, the group missions, things like that, is that it's a significant investment in time and energy and effort. And I think at this point, a majority of people can't devote that much time. I know for me, one of my biggest things about not being able to go to port battles for the majority of the time I played the game was I just don't have 2 hours to spend playing this game continuously. I have other things to do. I have to get up. I have to do other, I can't devote 2 hours of my day to one instance in a game, right? And I think that a majority of the people, or the majority of time I played the game, is that the reason I gravitated more towards the OS was because I could get a fight, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, maybe, a really long one, 45 minutes. But I would get more entertainment out of that, rather than sitting around doing basically nothing for 2 hours, looking at the other players who were also doing nothing while they strategized. And I think it needs to be streamlined and made, kind of forced people into action, right? And in port flips.
Do you roll open sea speed into that, like travel time?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Traveling across the map to stop a flip, to start a flip, to haul materials, just to get to the next port to do quests, it's just too long. Doing the career missions from 0 to 50, I think there's 10 of them. I think there's 10, one every 5 levels. The majority of the time you spend doing that is on the OS. It's just sailing, right? And that's not the fun part of the game. The fun part of the game isn't sitting on the OS all tabbed out to your YouTube screen, checking back every 5 or 10 minutes, hoping you got to the port. You're not bouncing off the land. The enjoyable part is playing the game, doing the missions, doing the PvP, doing the port flips, doing the port battles, and the port flips specifically. I'd say are probably the biggest point where it just takes too long, and it just drives people away. No one wants to spend 3, 4, 5, 6 hours a day trying to flip a port for a port battle. It's too long for how long people are playing the game right now.
I don't ever remember those things taking so long back then. I think at max, most 24 and 24s were roughly 40 minutes.
The thing is like you don't notice it, but you had 6 people patrolling and 6 people fleeting and PvP going on, all these things. But when you sit down and think about it, it's like if there's 3 battles in a night, that could be 6 hours. And that's a lot of time to say, sit down and do this. But also, please be invested in our mechanics here. Like, please want to win ports, please want to do this, right? It's just too much. And the same goes for like Smither was saying with streamlining timers. Like the ready room in a port battle doesn't need to be 11 minutes. It could be 5. It can be 3 minutes. It can be 2 minutes. Like, it could be a lot shorter. Sailing speed, flipping speed, everything. And I agree with that point for sure.
Some I agree, some I don't.
What do you disagree with?
I don't know, dude. 2 hours for a port battle, I think that's pretty fair, especially back in the day when you had the mechanics to make things that were strategic based.
But the caveat is it's 2020.
Yeah, there's a new meta. I get that.
People don't have that much time. They're not that invested. You're trying to cater to a wider audience, hopefully, than there was before, which was quite small. Does that change the thinking?
Oh, yeah, dude. If I take current mechanics, and yeah, definitely. Like, sailing on the OS should be 10 times faster. PB should probably be cut to an hour, to enforce the fight, because that's what you're there for. You're there to fight for the port. I don't know, man. It's just a lot to improve on is all there really is to say. Things that could have been done but never were,
Do you have another, now that you've heard them, Renee, do you have another wish list item?
I left on 2, right? So I got 1 more.
Yeah, if you have anything. I'm just curious, because these are the items that people want to see fixed, right? And people who have quit the game want to see fixed, probably, because no one who quit the game because the game was too slow wants to come back and sit for 3 hours to flip a port. No one wants to invest that time. So all of these changes are relevant. So even if they just serve as ideas, I mean, that's the whole point, right? Just to say, like, what about this? Have you thought about that? Have you thought about speeding the game up? Has that kind of just gone under the radar because it's always been this way? Has boat variety been tossed to the curb? You could still monetize a variety of boats. It doesn't have to be free boats. But anything else?
Like I said, I quit in 2012. That was the golden age of Pirates of the Burning Sea, dude. And I came back 2018. It was literally a complete 180 of the game. I really didn't understand a lot. I had trouble learning fights, getting my class down pat again.
I suppose.
I don't really have a third. Maybe it is speeding the game up a bit because it is a little monotonous sailing things from Golden Lake down to, let's say, Matthew Town or something like that. It's a long sail. It's time consuming. So yeah, speeding up would be my third.
What were you gonna say, Smither?
I suppose in that regard, improving the returning player or the new player experience would definitely have to be pretty high on the list, because say you get like a group of players who played in 2008, 2009, 2010, who took a break, or 2011, 2012, 2013, lost their account logins, didn't migrate their accounts from when Sony owned the game. It shouldn't be so difficult to relearn the game and to get where you need to be to do the things you want to do, right? And you shouldn't have to worry about some player, deciding to ruin your game experience for the fun of it, getting tagged by a level 50 in in a gank boat, or a level 20, him getting on a level 30 ult to hit new players. I think that's something that can be improved upon. And also, just in general, make the leveling experience easier, make it more straightforward. If you can, because this game's a very difficult game to learn and a very complex game to learn. There's a lot of different systems at play, even in just shipcom or just avatar combat. Make it so that the game teaches you better how to learn how to do that. Maybe make the missions NPCs more difficult. Make it so that they spawn in groups of 5, like the boarding combat system does. Make it so that there's one enemy or like a boss battle in the missions where he uses the skills like a player would, or a boss NPC on the open sea who uses skills like a player would, or turns his boat like a player would, or hits harder than a normal NPC. Like something that makes you think, right? Makes you challenge just like click spacebar.
Like a simulator, a simulation. Something that
just tweaking the current system so that they better mimic what you're going to experience when you get to the end game content, when you get to the part of the game that you're designed to play.
Yeah, so that you're not faced with this brick wall of some veteran player who suddenly is repairing, and you're like, whoa, that's a new mechanic.
I didn't know you could click repairs.
Exactly.
Right.
But so that's like changing the actual mechanics is pretty, far out. But what's something you could do like now to make the returning player experience better? Is it cheaper boats? Is it something like that? Like what's the actual realistic change that makes that experience better?
Having people. So I came back 2018. Who played France? Nobody. I contacted Bonaparte, somehow got him playing back. I contacted another dude. He came back a couple of weeks later, but by the end of the month, we had roughly a 4 or 5 man team. But leveling up to 50, it was just me. There's nobody else in France. Maybe the hit or miss player that says, hi, I remember you, or blah, 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 like something like that.
And if no one was there, you would just probably quit?
I would have quit because we play games for the social interaction, whether people like it or not. If you don't like that, you should probably be playing a single player game. But most of us here play for the social interaction. It's what makes games fun. It's what makes it fun. I mean,
is there a change though? Because player population is not always in your control. What's the change that makes it better? Something that devs could do.
It's a rough one. Hang on, let me conjure an idea.
I think making it more rewarding to work in groups of players would probably be a good one. Like making a society in the game, guild clan. Make it more meaningful to be part of one. Make it more meaningful to work in one. Make it more meaningful. Say you have to be part of a society, or you have to be in a society that has at least 50 members, or it has at least this much to build a ship, or to build a shipyard that has the economy production, right? Or it gives bonuses to the amount of XP players earn, right? If you're in a big society, maybe you get better XP when you level up. It makes it easier for new players to come back. Maybe you get more loot for being in a society, right? You get a loot bonus for sinking other players, or just fleeting, or doing missions, right? Make it worthwhile to invest your time into other players. Because at this point, you can play the game solo. Like many of us who've played for years, you can do everything yourself. Many of us have years worth of stuff sitting in our inventories, and it should be we should be rewarded for helping other players. It should be a benefit to both the old players and the new players.
Okay, and what I was hinting at, and this is the last topic before we shut this down, because we're gonna keep this nice and short. And if it does well, we'll do another one. Maybe bring in a guest. Maybe bring in Mo. Maybe bring in, I don't know, someone crazy like Archer. Who knows?
Bring in Daryl.
Maybe
I'd love to get one of those two people and like just talk to them about how they see the game, how they feel about it.
And that's the goal, I think, is to have like a new personality or somebody from the game, like maybe bring in like an econ person one day and be like, what do you think? But what I was hinting at with the idea of new player experience is boat prices, because right now boats are very expensive for people, new players or returning players. If you quit the game years ago and you had 20 mil, back then you'd be quite rich. That was like 10 HMCs, a couple third rates. You buy a first rate for 20 mil back in the day when they were obsolete. Now if you have 20 mil, that's 4 hectares. That's, not even an adventure if you're buying the marks. It's nothing. So what do you do to fix boat prices? Are they too high? Can you fix them? I would say they are. I think they have to do some sort of massive revamp to loot or something, because new players can't afford boats when they level up. You have 1 million doubloons and the cheapest viable boat's a hectare and it's 3 to 5 million. What are you going to do?
Hear me out. And this is kind of a weird idea. It works in some games, other games. They should first bump up the experience rate and the doubloon price per mission. And let's say at every 5 level increments, whenever you complete a major milestone mission or a career mission, it offers you a selection of a boat, whether it be a Postilion or a Cerberus or a Stralsund. It should give you that option. Or if that's not, they can't do that, then add in a vendor where they sell boats for very cheap prices. It's just the base version of the boat. God damn, cat.
I got your point. Basically, make it guide the player. Give them items. Give them boats. Don't make them rely on an auction house. That's too expensive. Let them reach 50 at least with a completely handheld experience, which I think a lot of games do these days, and it's been successful for them. But Smithers, any thoughts on this topic? On boats?
I mean, I think what Renee said is right. I think that they need to. I don't think you're going to fix the current economy system, and I don't think that you're going to be able to fix the amount of doubloons or the amount of money or the amount of items that players who have been playing for 12 years have. And I don't think taking away people's things is a valid, it's just not going to work, right? You're going to alienate people. So at that point, you're just going to have to deal with the situation as it is, and you're just going to have to start giving people things, right? I think maybe, how about every career mission, you get a choice of a boat, as Renee said, right? A slight upgrade from the last one. Maybe every 2 career missions, you get a choice of a boat, right? These are the things, maybe say every 5 levels you get a choice of a boat, and the opposite. So every 10 levels you get a choice of a boat, and every 5 levels you get a choice of fittings to put on the boat, right? So this one I can choose either a hauling boat or a frigate, or a catching boat, like a hunter. And then the next level, as the game kind of is right now, you could add some permanent outfittings, just your choice of basic permanent outfittings. What would you like to put on that boat, right? Now that you're the next level up and you've used it for a little while, how would you like to specialize that boat? Because I feel like that's a big part of the game that people don't understand, is it's not just having your boat, it's also how you fit your boat, how you want it to sail, and what you want to do with it. And I think giving people the choice of fittings and the boat would help integrate them better into the system that they're going to have to use when they're level 50, right? Because currently as it is, level 20, you can just use an unfit boat and probably do your missions if someone gives you one. Not if you buy it, because it's too expensive for the average player. But, giving them a boat and the fittings, and they don't have to buy it, just given to them, and they're like, oh, well, I got this cool boat. And then, this next level, do I want to do armor? Do I want to do reload? What do I want to do with it? I think that would be a beneficial way to keep people around. And it would help streamline the experience for people who already know how to play, and it would keep them around a little longer.
Yeah, it plays into what you're talking about too, is that then they know how to fit a boat, they reach 50, they realize, I've got my new Hector, I need to put fittings on it. They're not just confused with Outrunner's rigs or whatever, right?
Right.
But that's for new players. But for returning players, What's the word of advice? Find people who have been around. Try and nation chat and try and get somebody who can help provide you with boats for a discount or what. Because a returning player who looks at the auction house is going to be, in shock. So what's the advice there if they're listening to this? Go and find somebody, or what? Or start econ.
Yeah, well, it could be. They've posted a quick and dirty econ guide on the forums that people can use. Get yourself interested in that. If you don't want to deal with other players and you want to do it yourself, you can do it that way. Or Yeah, I mean, it's a community. It's an MMO. You know, it's relying on the community.
Is there an onus on returning people, or not returning people, but veteran players who've been around for a long time to pick up the slack and say, hey, I just saw you back in the game, you logged in, here's a bunch of stuff. Do you need anything? Is there an onus on people like that to jump in there and fill that gap while the devs do something? Or, is that worth it? Because right now you could log into Spain in the evening time and there might not be many people there, right? So I guess the word is maybe reach out to Discord, reach out to the official forums, do more. Don't just sit there and go, well, I can't afford anything, I'm done, right? Like, have some perseverance. But a lot of people won't know where to go, right? They won't know about these things.
But even if you were that returning player and you start typing in nation chat and you're like, oh, I'm poor, I can't afford any boats. The one argument you're going to get is people are going to tell you that, hey, spend $3 and buy yourself a BSN stuff for 100 million. And that is a disgusting answer. That shouldn't be the end all be all solve all problems right there.
Is that because there should be a system in the game that you can not buy currency, premium currency, I guess you would call it, to survive? Is that, there should be an alternative? Is that what you're saying?
There should be an alternative. And one of the things it's going to boil down to is, blowing out the water on the inflation. Even if you do some of the economy, your turnaround profits aren't going to net you that much. It's not going to be that fast. And we live in the day and age of instant gratification. You can't get that here.
Yeah, and I think what we keep coming back to is the idea that all the problems have complex answers, like adding rewards to missions or speeding up OS mechanics. All these things are big changes to systems in the game. And that's not necessarily on the table right now. So what I've been trying to think of for myself is like, what are simple solutions to these things? And it's usually player driven. It's usually more players, or hey, people like actually participate, actually sell stuff to people, give stuff to new people, all these different things. It comes down to the players, because the devs don't have the power to change these things right now, or yet. Hopefully they will soon. So I think people have to realize you can't just wait forever for these things to change. You, as the veteran player with billions of doubloons, can go out and bankroll a bunch of new people or returning players and make the experience better. I think that's sort of the final point for me. You guys have anything else to add? Should we wrap it up?
I mean, I've done that, dude. I've spent millions on people, returning players, new players. Some new players they retained for maybe a month or two until they're fun. That's it. I mean, people get it, they spend it, they quit. It's a weird world we live in. But maybe what you were saying, or Smithers was saying, it is a community-driven game. Maybe a returning player logs into, let's say, France. What if it gave him like a message on his screen that said, hey, if you're looking for ships or advice or any returning help, contact this player.
Or edit the system message to point them to the Discord, or point them to the forums, something like that. Something to break it, because nation chat's not enough anymore. But
I agree.
Yeah, I think a system message is a great solution. Of course, it's up to the players at this point to take care of the game, but it's always been up to the players to take care of the game. And so,
so there's an onus on them, but at the end of the day, they
can
do so much, and
they can only do so much, right? There has to be, and I think part of it is that they have to be inspired to take care of the new players, right? Because as it stands, it's like, why would I spend my time and energy and possibly real life money that I've invested into the game helping someone who is going to see the current state of the game, who's going to see, oh, well, this isn't really what I thought it was, or oh, this isn't really what it used to be, or oh, I don't know what's going on in the future. So there has to be some communication. There has to be their level of like, oh, well, the game looks like it's going in the right direction, so it's probably worth my time and energy to invest in new players because I want them to stick around to see what the future brings for this game.
Yeah, and you create sort of a chicken and egg argument where it's like you need progress to drive inspiration. But
Yeah, it goes back and forth.
Some sort of progress. You're going to have this backlog of people just saying, well, I log in, I check, I go to one port battle a week. That's it. I'm waiting. What's the tipping point? The first build? The second build?
I don't know. I think it's like an overall. Okay, I'll put it like this. You guys read that newsletter that came out a few months ago from Daryl?
Yeah. Yeah.
Was that not hype?
Yeah, it was great.
I read that and I was instantly fucking excited because I feel like the game's in great hands. I think Daryl's going to do a good job. And I hope he does. But I think there should be more relations between the players and the owner or developers. Because that not only gets people excited, it gives people hope for a better future of the game.
And that's a plug for the official Discord where Daryl's active. So go post there. Join the Discord. I mean, that's really what it is. Like, if you want interaction with the devs, go to the Discord.
Yeah, and they're there. I think it's important. Like, they're there. They'll answer your questions. If you have a technical question, go there. I think the community is very helpful. It's just you have to find someone on at the same time as you, and Discord's a good platform for that.
With Legacy coming, there's pros and cons, right?
Mm-hmm.
One pro is that it brings people to the game. Either they stay Legacy, they go normal, whatever. What are the pros and cons of the server itself, though?
Nostalgia.
Nostalgia. Potential.
Ship variety. Yeah, potential. That's a big if, though.
But when you say all those things, right? My initial reaction is like ship variety, population, all that. Those can all be remedied by fixing the live servers, right?
Yes.
So what's the real difference? Is it really just the magic skills? Is it really?
It's a mix between nostalgia, population difference, and stats. I would imagine.
Yeah, but does that make, like, right now we play the game pretty regularly. It's not bad, right?
Mm-mm.
Like the combat does not need magic skills to come back.
No.
It doesn't need the same boat variety.
No.
So what makes
Well,
that so?
I would argue that it needs the boat variety.
Which could be achieved, though. Quite easily, yeah. Yeah. So that brings you back to the idea, is Legacy even necessary?
Probably not.
No, but it's a beautiful marketing scheme is what it is. Because they say, oh, Legacy, we're going to go back to 2.10, 2010 where the game had magic skills. You could sail your HMCs and Mercies and spike people out at 550. It sounds beautiful. It sounds really fun until you actually dive into it and you're like, man, I really have to level all the way to 50 again. I have to reset up all this economy. I have to rebuild all these ships. I have to do all these quests again. And at that point, it doesn't sound too much fun because if there's not enough player base to come back, then you don't have enough to sustain the market anymore.
And I'd like to throw in that you have to relearn the past 8 years of gameplay that you've been playing. Is that the last 8 years of game experience is no longer going to be useful for you. And all the people who stuck around after 2.11, 2.12 are going to find themselves like fish out of water because the gameplay is, while the core concepts are the same, the sailing and how to turn and how the combat system works. All of the minutia that actually makes you, depends whether you're good or bad in the game. You're going to have to relearn. And I think a lot of people are going to get really frustrated about that. Does that make sense?
It does.
To an extent. So I left 2012. That's before all the big changes happened. I came back in 2018 or whatever. Dude, I struggled a lot. I'm telling you, I probably lost like 40 to 60 different fights just trying to remember how to play, remember how to 1v1. And it was a challenging experience.
If people come back, right, and they find it difficult, at what point do you just like cut the cord and say, okay, Legacy's done? Like, what's the break point there?
Probably when it...
Because it needs to have a certain population to stay viable.
Yeah.
But if people come back and they get frustrated and there's an initial boom, like, Legacy won't gain players most likely after the initial burst, right?
Of course. Yeah.
So it's all about retaining that burst.
Yes.
We all know that PotBS does not do that. We all
No.
know that 2.10
And hasn't ever
2.10
at any
never
point.
did it. Exactly.
No.
So what's the point in doing it? If everything can be fixed like we just talked about, if boat variety can be fixed, if numbers can be fixed, if stats can be balanced, all these things can be fixed. What's the point of Legacy if it's just going to die out?
It's a really good marketing tool. Yeah, it's a great marketing tool. And even if it doesn't succeed, which is, a very real possibility, the amount of people that it could bring back to at least try the live servers is worth, I think, the cost.
But is there no other viable way to bring people back and get a spike in population?
Without announcing like major changes? I don't think so.
I guess the fear is like you bring people back for Legacy, they try it for 2-3 months, or whatever they do. We're assuming months. It might be less, might be more. But if they get burnt out then and they quit, that might be the last time they come back, right? Like it's kind of like a last throw of the dice.
Sure, but at this point, is it worth throwing the dice for it? Because I don't think the game as it stands and the way things have been going, the game needs help. It needs something, right? And if you want to roll the dice and at least maybe get a few, how many people are we thinking are going to come back for Legacy? Dozens? Hundreds? If at least, a portion of those players decides to, stick around on live servers, the game's going to be in a better place, regardless of whether Legacy succeeds, than it is now, and that it would be without the Legacy server.
I don't know. It's interesting. I was saying earlier, I don't even know if Flip is recording or not. Yeah, I wrote down pros and cons on Notepad. The pros of Legacy are nostalgia, ship variety, and magic skills. That's really all you have.
Yeah.
The cons is everything else. It's getting to 50. It's getting recipes. It's setting up ships. It's a whole annoying process that I already did back then, and I don't want to do it again.
And so why not, as a company, why don't they fix or work on the live servers for a bit? I don't know, a couple months worth of, once they actually can put out patches. Do a bit of work on that and see what happens before you do Legacy. Because if it upticks, or if you can make the experience better, you don't need Legacy, right?
That's something I was saying earlier, like maybe, because I'm curious what they're going to do after they drop Legacy and all this revenue comes. Like, what's the plan here? Are they going to roll something on a live server immediately, or like wait till people come back, spend couple dollars on a subscription? What are they going to do?
Before you finish that point, there's another danger too, where you create the Legacy server, and most people who play PvP on the live server go over there for at least a short period of time, probably, which leaves the live servers quite empty to any sort of action. Maybe it's all speculation, but that drop in population which might happen you could kill both servers in one go. You know what I mean? Do you see what I'm saying there?
Yeah, but if people are going to Legacy to immediately get PvP, you're sadly mistaken. It's not going to happen right away. It's going to happen maybe within the first 3 or 4 months.
No, but if you take like all the people like who play live right now who PvP, like our group, the Euro group, the few rats that do it, I suspect most of those people will try Legacy, right?
Yeah.
When they leave, there'll be nothing on live. Because there's not going to be like an influx of new players to live right away from Legacy, I don't think. So that kind of leaves both servers in a bad position. I guess my point is like, why jeopardize it and split into 3 servers when you could try and fix the live servers first and then create Legacy if that isn't working to bring back players and generate interest? Like a tiered response, instead of just saying, here's 3 servers, go, here's some changes. Do you guys like this? Do you want to come back now? If it doesn't work, okay, here's Legacy, come back, try that. That kind of approach, right?
Yeah, I see what you're saying. So basically, if they just, I don't want to say the word gut, but if they just gutted the whole idea of Legacy, and instead they're like, hey, this new build we're going to roll out, we're going to keep this on the test server. We're going to keep adding changes here and there to improve the live servers, and you guys are more than welcome to come on and try it out.
Yeah, like here's the accuracy curve has been a little bit, softened, right? Here's one skill back that used to do something, like just break formation. That's the only one it's bad. little changes that throws a bone to the old players, but keeps the game moving in the direction they want. And you harmonize everybody rather than splitting it, and it's a big gamble, I guess, splitting the servers, where continuing development on Antigua and Roberts is not, right?
I'm with you, dude. I like the idea of, everyone coming together on the same servers instead of splitting the player base down the middle.
But that brings up the issue of, which was talked about on the official Discord, of port battle times if servers are merged, or for legacy server, because there's one server for EU, NA. How do the port battle times work?
That's a tricky one, and you're not going to like my answer because nobody. You're never going to change the times. It's never going to be viable for everybody unless you have a huge influx of players that make people who play on Antigua as Europeans. If there was players at the more population, these players would have to go back to Roberts to go, do actual big port battles within their time zone.
Yeah, but the point of a merge or legacy is that there'll be everybody on one server, and they have to set a time window for port battles, and no matter what happens, somebody is left out in the cold. Either there's day flips for North American players, or really late night port battles for European players. They can't attend those. They can't compete in those if they're, have an average schedule, let's say. So does that take away from legacy? Does that make people want to quit or not want to compete because they lose ports when they're offline? All these things. We've seen it before in Antigua with the current window. We've seen people quit and come and go. So, how do you remedy that? And is that a problem for legacy, I guess, is the question.
I don't think you can remedy that, dude.
Anything, Smithers? Do you disagree?
The only thing that I see what would be reasonable is to split the window of the port battles on the same server into two windows exactly, so that you increase the number of total port battles and you allocate, let's say, 2 port battles per nation, offensively for the Euro hours, and you do 2 port battles per nation offensively for the American hours, and you just kind of hope that things fall in line. Because even back in the quote glory days of Pirates of the Burning Sea, you still had the issue of people who played at off hours on the servers robbing port flips, right? I don't know if you guys remember the quote,
Yes.
the night flippers.
Yes, and that made people quit.
Yeah, it made a lot of people quit. And it currently still makes people quit, right? Because they feel like they're not going to be able to engage in the part of the game they want to engage in because other people are taking that opportunity away from them.